Hey everybody, it's Commander Clyde. Welcome back to some more update notes. I think I might have missed the last one for a video. Whoops. Sorry about that, but we're here for 9.4, Jade Emperor, of course. Hopefully I can get a gameplay or a demo reaction for this as well. We'll definitely want to see that. But yeah, Yu Huang, the Jade Emperor. I guess we can read the stuff, you know. Go look at the passive, Master of the Tao. Yu Huang attunes himself to the Tao, giving his basic attacks and abilities additional effects. He gains a stack of Tao every 15 seconds. He may also gain a stack by hitting an enemy after not taking or dealing damage for 3 seconds. Once he has 6 or more stacks, Yu Huang becomes attuned, allowing his basic attacks to chain to one additional enemy. Chain basic attack damage 75% of his normal basic attack. Attunement cost is 6 Tao, and you can have up to 12 Tao stacked. So it's an interesting thing because it's part of his kit discouraging you from actually, dealing damage, which is a little bit unusual. Hopefully everyone can control themselves, not just be like see enemy, hit enemy. But I don't know if that would actually maximize Tao usage or not. You may just be better off throwing your abilities out. We'll see. Let's look at his first ability. Flames of the Phoenix. Yu Huang conjures 4 cinders of the Phoenix, spreading them in an X shape. The cinders rush inward, dealing damage once they travel. When the cinders meet, they explode in a field of flames that persists for 3 seconds, burning enemies inside. If Yu Huang is attuned, when the cinders explode, all enemies in the area have their magical protections reduced. Cinder damage 15 plus 55 plus 15%, which is for each one. Initial damage is 70 to 190 plus 45% of your power. Then the burn damage is 5 to 9 plus 5% of your magical power every half of a second, which lasts for 2 seconds. Prot reduction is for up to 12 protections for 3 seconds. Cost 60 to 80, cooldown 11 to 9 seconds. It might be a short cooldown. I think the thing about this ability is a lot of its damage is avoidable. Which if you hit all 4, obviously that's going to be 270. I believe, plus the 190 as well, which can definitely add up, but I feel like he won't hit you with too much damage if you're paying attention. Anyway, second ability, Tao Cultivation. Yu Huang begins cultivating his Tao before firing a projectile that damages and slows enemies it passes through. As it travels, it leaves behind a trail that explodes, damaging and rooting all enemies. This ability can be fired early to deal 60% of its damage, gaining additional damage up to 1 second. Yu Huang can also continue charging up to 3 seconds to earn more Tao upon firing. Projectile damage is 50 up to 130 plus 35%, with AoE damage being 50 up to 230 plus 50%, so 20% for 1 second, so root 1 seconds. Max Tao gain 6, cost is 60 to 80, cooldown is 13 seconds at all ranks. Interesting one. It still doesn't feel like an overwhelming amount of damage, but there's a lot of effects happening on all of his abilities though, so damage isn't necessarily the primary focus. His third ability, Celestial Flight. Yu Huang calls forth the Pearl Dragon from beneath him, vanishing himself into the air and becoming untargetable. He then gracefully floats back down to the ground in a controlled flight, damaging enemies where he lands. While Yu Huang is floating, he may refire this ability to increase his downward momentum, causing him to fall faster. If Yu Huang is attuned, The Pearl Dragon follows him as he descends, knocking back any enemies beneath him. And this is just one piece of damage, 70 up to 270, plus 50% of your power. 15% movement speed. Cost 70. Cooldown is 20 seconds because the effect of banishing himself is pretty strong. Obviously, you don't want that available very often. It'll be interesting to see how this works. Does this... No, it's just a knockback if the dragon, if he also has enough Dow for the dragon to, for him to get the attuned effect. Anyway, let's go to the ultimate Dueling Dragons. Yu Huang manifests a huge surge of dragon-shaped energy, becoming CC immune and summoning the Pearl Dragon to oppose him. He then has 3 seconds to aim his dragon of energy toward the Pearl Dragon, who will charge directly at it. Both dragons damage and push enemies caught in the blast. If the dragons collide, a damaging explosion occurs in the area. If Yu Huang is attuned, the width of the dragons is increased by 50%. Push damage is 150 up to 450 plus 50%. Explosion damage is 100 up to 260 plus 45%. So that's 95%. Total scaling. What is the full damage if you hit all of it? Quickly. 710 plus 95%. That is fairly damaging, actually. So this ability does do a pretty high amount of damage compared to the rest of them. Of course, that mana cost is 100, and then cooldown is also 100 seconds. There's the abilities. Here's all the skins. More demon skins because everybody likes those. I really don't know if anybody likes these, honestly. It's kind of weird. Another Shadows theme skin. Persephone. Crocfather Sobek has quite a bit of potential here. Then here's the Zeus thing. I don't know what they mean by exclusive DLC. We'll see what that is. And Tyr here and Tiamat getting skins. And then here's the things on the bonus, which will be coming next month. And then there's the release schedule. Cool. And then the Streamer Showdown stuff. I still don't know when these are coming out, but so we'll ignore that for now. Online connectivity and server issues. The team is working to mitigate the issues resulting from last week's attacks, and the first performance fix is going live with this update. We expect to continue working on this throughout 9.4's live updates to release additional improvements. Okay, being worked on as usual. Server's always being worked on, though. And some jungle practice stuff. Got the areas, some of the, the Godbots, Fire Giant, Gold Fury, Buff Camp are now classified as jungles in the jungle practice, which apparently they aren't. So you can check out things that interact with the jungle in practice now. And you can spawn a Titan in the Tower of Phoenix area. Very fun. And health bars for Fire Giant and Gold Fury, because in practice, well, they don't have any, and it's weird. Here's a bunch of UI stuff. I don't really care about that. Don't read the bugs. Boring. Oh, these might be important, maybe. Berserker Shield. This item will now auto-activate at low HP when it comes off cooldown to be more consistent with similar items like Aussie. Cool. Aegis of Judgment. This relic will no longer deal damage to structures. The fact it was to begin with is a bit weird. And then whatever. Wait, fixed an issue where Towers of Phoenixes would not target an invisible god with Seer of the Jungle passive activated. What? What are these? Weird interactions, man. Anyway, some game balance. Game modes. Conquest. These first two Conquest changes are subtle but have a lot of potential to create change. The goal of these changes are to make duo lane less volatile and to slow down the gold and XP gain of mid and jungle. I guess this is fine. But, I mean, if your hunter happens to do... Okay, let me read it first, and then I'll explain that. Support buff camp, increase base XP reward of support buff holder from 45 to 90. Decrease base gold reward of support buff holder from 24 to 44. I guess to help the support more, which it doesn't really because jungle and mid are usually clearing this camp anyway. So, slow down the golden XP gain of mid and jungle. Nah, we're not really doing that. We're just going to make a change we think helps that. And just say that it does that, which is inaccurate. Because in most games I've had mid and jungle are clearing this camp the most often. Back Harpy camp on duo side, but they did remove an Elder Harpy from the back left camp. So I guess that's better. But if you're buffing the reward from the support buff, this is not really accomplishing anything. What was the point of this? And then Obelisk decreased team XP gain per offering from 25 to 15. So they did do that at least. It's a little bit harder to activate your Obelisk and you don't get as much for offering experience. That's fine. Okay, here's a bunch of stuff that I'm not going to read, but basically this entire patch items gods are only going to be nerfed because the current top picks being too strong and there being too much damage in the game has been an ongoing debate probably going on well before this season, even probably into the last one. Sure, anyway, they're going to be doing a bunch of that. So, here's what's happening. Nerf a large amount of top-performing gods and items. Achieve a net decrease of damage in SMITE through these nerfs. Make changes that will be felt in all game modes. Do not buff. I mean, you already said this is the nerf update, so... Okay, got an item selection. Evaluate the highest pick, ban rate, purchase rate. Compare that with the highest damage output, win percentage, and community sentiment. Consider Conquest data as highest priority, but compare with non-Conquest modes too. Just don't even bother with that. They should only be considering Conquest data, honestly, because that is the marquee mode for the game. So why do we really care about balancing around anything else? Anyway. Nerf god damage output wherever possible and things that contribute directly to damage like cell buffs and cooldowns. Nerf item physical or magical power whenever possible, or things that contribute to damage like attack speed or bonus damage. Do not nerf gods or items that are already perceived as weak. There are a few defensive nerfs to gods as we felt that gods needed nerfs, but damage that... Okay. Let me reread this. There are a few defensive nerfs to gods as we felt that a god needed nerfs, but damage was not a factor for them. That particular god, they mean. There are a few item protection nerfs to make sure we don't shift the game too much in favor of tanks. 2 reworks, Erlang Shen and Archmage's Gem. And then here we go. Here's a bunch of stuff about crowd control, but basically they've increased CC duration reduction from DR from 33% to 40% per stack of DR and max 2 stacks of DR, which is normal. Decrease the CC duration minimum from 0.5 to 0.4 seconds. CC duration cannot be reduced lower than 0.4 seconds through DR. All right, this is going to go quick, and we may not read most of these. all the belts getting nerfed. These 3 decrease damage buff 15 to 10%. Berserker decrease damage buff from 25 to 20. Bracers decrease power buff from 15 to 10%. Upgrades. Oh, this one got it too. And then this one decreased power buff from 20% to 15. Chronos Pendant decreased power from 100 to 90. Ratatouille 140 to 120. I'm just not going to say decrease magical power because it's all nerfs. Calamitous Rod 140 to 120. Nimble Rod 140 to 120. Divine Ruin 110 to 100. Spear of Desolation 120 to 110. Tell Kinds of Ring 25. Decreased attack speed from 25 to 20%. Decreased passive bonus damage from 15 to 10%. Ring of Hecate. Decreased magical power from 90 to 80. Decreased attack speed from 25 to 20%. Caduceus Shield. Decreased physical power from 30 to 25. Breastplate of Valor. Decreased physical protection from 65 to 55. Breastplate of Determination. Protection from 65 to 55. Breastplate of Vigilance. 65 to 55. Concealate. Decreased physical power from 50 to 40. Mystical Mail. Decreased passive base damage from 25 to 20. Bulwark of Hope. Decreased magical protection from 80 to 70. Hide of the enemy line. Neiman block stacks now prevent 50% of basic attack damage instead of a full 100%. I don't know what the point of this is. Why are we changing block? Why are we giving an item a exclusive type of block that other things don't have? That's weird. Like, block on everything just outright blocks the damage from the next basic attack. And this is just going to be 50%. Why? When hunters are still going to have the same amount of crit available to them. Anyway, Crusher decreases attack speed from 15 to 10%. Hydra's Lament decreased bonus damage scaling from 40 to 35%. All the Jotun items decrease physical power from 45 to 40. Serrated Edge physical power from 35 to 30. Decrease passive physical power from 10 to 8 per stack. Aussie decreased physical lifesteal from 20 to 15%. Atalanta's Bow decreased attack speed from 25 to 20%. Why is there so much? Wind Demon decreased passive duration from 5 seconds to 4 seconds. Deathbringer decreased physical power from 55 to 50 on all of them. Which is where it used to be anyway. Gauntlet of Thieves decreased base health provided from 300 to 250. Same on the evolved version. Pridwin decreased shield health scaling. Earned protection from items from 100 to 90%. They probably could have nerfed that more, but whatever. Sovereignty decreased physical protection from 45 to 40. All of the Heart Wards decreased magical protections provided from passive aura from 20 to 15. I need to take a drink. Celestial Legion Helm decreased magical power from 80 to 70. Decreased time taken to gain stacks from 2 to 3 seconds. Increased time after being hit by physical damage to gain a stack from 2 to 3 seconds. This item could have had its magical power nerfed more, in my opinion, because I'm tired of seeing mages building this thing. Anyway. Vampiri Shroud decreased magical power from 30 to 20. Whatever. Mantle of Discord decreased physical protections from 60 to 55. Increased cooldown of the passive effect from 90 to 110 seconds. We haven't really been seeing that item that often anymore. Archmage's Gem. This is technically a rework, but it's not much. This item no longer procs and consumes the stacks unless a god is successfully damaged. Decreased scaling per stack from 1.5 to 1 seconds. Okay, gods. Here we go. Tiamata. Oops. Tiamat Primordial Onslaught decreased base damage per shot from 80 to 100 to 80 to 90. It's not even that much of a nerf. Agni getting a necessary nerf, I guess. I mean, he's really popular right now. Does he need to be nerfed? Maybe not. Because the god was kind of balanced for a long time anyway. And I don't know what happened. They didn't really buff him that much and he suddenly got really popular. That might have been just the thing of people figured out that he's a really safe god because he's got a ranged stun and a dash. And being able to not die got really valuable in the last couple of seasons. Anyway, Combustion decreased magical power scaling from 10 to 8%. Rain of Fire decreased base damage from 140 to 300 to 120 to 280. Decreased magical power scaling from 70 to 65%. Persephone. Probably some necessary nerfs happening here. Harvest decreased explosion damage. Decreased magical power scaling from 80 to 70%. Spite damage, decreased magical power scaling from 35 to 30%. I don't know why it says decreased damage and doesn't give me a number. Just say the scaling was reduced. Grasp of Death. This ability no longer applies any attack speed reduction to the caged target. So, getting some damage nerfs, decreased base damage from 40 to 160 to 40 to 140. Let's top end. Decreased magical power scaling on Supernova from 50 to 45% per hit. Okay. A lot of these changes are just going to kind of be because everything's getting nerfed. Thoth Hieroglyphic Assault decreased damage increase on successfully hitting a god from 20 to 15% per shot. Decrease the cooldown reduction on successfully hitting a god from 1 to 0.5 seconds per shot. That's fair because that lowers the damage of this. Final Judgment decreased magical power scaling by a whopping 5% from 120 to 115. What's the point of that? Why not just nerf his passive so you don't get as much pen for stacks, you know? Because it's really easy to get pen right now. But no, we're not going to nerf the thing on the god that's actually a problem. We're just going to nerf the god in some way and pretend that that fixes the problem. And then Zeus, Chain Lightning decreased base damage from 40 to 160 to 30 to 150. Decreased slow from 30 to 20%. That part is actually kind of fair. Then a charge decreased base damage from 50 to 170 to 40 to 160. I don't think that's cool because you should get rewarded for being able to get 3 stacks. And now they've reduced the top end damage. But it's kind of like this god's sort of balanced by his lack of safety. Which is, I mean, he can't run from you. What is he going to do? You dive on him, he dies. Like, he's just that kind of character. He can blow you up for doing that, but he'll still be dead. So nerfing him's not really... Nerfing some of his damage is not really the best move. Just because you're weakening a god that's already got a pretty obvious disadvantage. Which is his lack of mobility. Which they have tried to address, but... I mean, obviously you don't want him to be too mobile because then he becomes unfair because then he's got too much damage and you can't catch him, but... I think Zeus was in a fairly balanced spot, honestly. But, you know, it's whatever. He's kind of close to the top end in performance. So, that's their logic. Achilles, Gift of the Gods, decreased protection bonus per level from 2 to 1.5. Decreased physical power bonus per level from 2 to 1.5. Shield of Achilles, decreased long range damage from 75 to 70%. This affects base and scaling damage. Well, I don't know. You guys aren't giving me a base number, though. So... And then Chalk, even though I love him, he's my favorite. He's getting nerfed, decreases self-healing, physical power scaling from 15 to 10% per tick, which is entirely fair because it is the highest healing ability in the game. So, you know, on a god that's not even advertised as the healing god. And then Stormcall increased cooldown from 75 to 90 seconds. Probably fair because It's a lot of damage. Has a knock-up and a silence. So, you know, entirely fair. Gilgamesh being nerfed again. This god will not be playable. No, that's not true, but damn, if they are not nerfing the crap out of him, he's going to end up like Cucullin was at the bottom of his nerfs. Anyway, Sunforge Scimitar decreased base buff duration from 4 to 3 seconds and decreased maximum buff duration from 7 to 6 seconds, which decreases the total possible duration of this effect from 11 to 9 seconds. That's fair. That's still really long, so decreased bonus damage from 3 to 2.5% of his max health per hit. Winds of Shamash decreased binding damage, physical power scaling from 60 to 50%, decreased wind while slow from 50 to 40%. Cool. Mulan, I don't like this. I don't like her very much because she's really annoying to fight. Cross strike, decreased physical power scaling from 35 to 30% per hit. When we're talking 5% of scaling, I don't really know if that makes that big of a difference in game. Spear thrust, decreased bonus damage when hitting the same target with both hits from spear thrust from 20 to 80 to 20 to 60. Decreased physical power scaling when hitting the same target with both hits from the spear thrust from 15 to 10%. Pillar of Dawn, this ability is now immune to all CC except stuns, as opposed to being entirely CC immune. Stuns will interrupt Shiva out of this ability if he isn't at any time during its 3 phases. Now, this is weird, and I don't like it, because when he is in the pillar, he can actually be hit by abilities. Like, I was playing Hercules against one, and I had no problem hitting my driving strike while he was using Pillar of Dawn. So, I mean, it already kind of worked. He's not entirely CC immune in that if you catch him during the correct part of it. So it's like there's a amount of counterplay that already exists, that kind of existed with the god already, and this kind of makes it a little more boring because you can just stun him. Which, whatever. I don't see the point of this. I don't know how this is really a nerf, to be honest. Because you can catch his... I forget what part of it. I don't know when he's channeling the pillar or while he's dashing. If is the part that you could hit him with crowd control before this, but that doesn't really matter now that much. Anyway, Bologna, shield bash decrease slow from 15 to 35% to 10 to 20 because that's way overtuned on a god that already builds Frostbound. Bludgeon decrease spin base damage from 45 to 165 to 35 to 155. Not really the problem with this character. It's that this up here and her passive is also OP. And it's not really ever been addressed. Also, not nerfing the damage on the slam on Bludgeon, I don't really care because it scales with the amount of hits and that takes a little bit of skill to actually do. So it doesn't really matter that much. Camazot's bad at a hell, decreased base damage from 100 to 260 to 100 to 240 per hit. Arachne Predator, decreased Arachne's basic attack damage increase from 1.5 to 1.25% for every 5% of targets missing health. And Venomous Smite, decreased physical power scaling from 10 to 8% per tick. If we're talking ticks, that's a more significant change to scaling than some of the other abilities up here where we're talking about 5% on an ability that hits once, which is... Like... Arachne did need to kind of be nerfed, I guess, but her main problem is her ability to cheese farm you early by putting her spiders down on camps, and then she can gank you way earlier than any other god, and you just die because she's already level 2. Which isn't a skill-based thing, or even a damage-based thing with her abilities. Which means they probably either need to nerf the amount of spiders you can have down, nerf their health or damage, you know, something like that. These aren't really the nerfs that the god needs. Anyway, cleanup. Banshee's Wail, decrease final hit physical power scaling from 70 to 60%. Lurching Claw, decrease claw damage, physical power scaling from 85 to 80%. Again, we're talking 5%. Is that really that big of a deal? Tearing the Veil, decrease opening damage, physical power scaling from 70 to 60%. I guess if we're talking in 300, if you have like 300 base power, which is attainable if you're jungling with her and build the correct items to do that. We could assume that. Let me see how much 5% scaling nerf would actually do for damage. So let's see, 1% is 3 times 5 is 15 damage. Yeah, that's not a lot objectively. On mages, that's a lot more noticeable because you're going to have probably at least 700 power. So yeah, if we're really looking to detune God, I think scaling changes need to be at least 10% probably. Anyway, Loki behind you, decrease bonus damage from 20 to 15% on basic attacks that hit from behind. Vanish, decrease physical power scaling from 25 to 20% per tick. That's fine, but I thought the main issue of frustration with him was his 3 being knock-up immune and doing a lot of damage. I mean, this does help because they've decreased behind you damage, which he gets if you've hit a target with your 2 already and then use your 3. Because enemies affected by his 2 take the bonus damage from his passive, regardless of whether or not it's behind him or he's behind them. Let's see, Tsukuyomi, Dark Moon Cherry can increase cooldown from 10 to 12 seconds, which is fair. But the thing about him, already got a lot of cooldown. His cooldown gets reduced if he grabs the shuriken off the person he threw it at. So you might have to nerf it bigger just because the way you play the god isn't going to change with that. Anyway, Silver Moon Caltrops decrease bonus damage, physical power scaling from 40 to 30% on ranged follow-up attack. Muzen Cobb, Swarm, decrease physical power scaling from 80 to 75%. Stinger, decrease physical power scaling from 110 to 100%. Decrease slow from 20 to 30% to 20% at all ranks. That's actually a good nerf. This isn't that useful because it's still just 100% scaling anyway. 5% scaling decrease again. Again, in some cases, that's not a big number. That's not a lot of damage. Especially since hunters are generally shy of 200 power. I mean, sometimes they go over it a little bit, but most often they don't get that high of total physical power, so this is not much. That's not much. That's like nothing. What is that going to be? Like 8 damage? 10 damage? Maybe? Like, I don't know. Anyway. It doesn't really change the frustration of the god, which is hives. And honey slowing, which I don't actually know what the number on honey is for slow. I don't know if it's too high or not. But not addressing the points of frustration with the god. Apollo being, like, they shouldn't even bother nerfing him. He doesn't need one. But they've decreased the physical power scaling on his ult ticks. For how often are you actually landing on somebody successfully with this ability? And how often are you using that as a method to actually deal damage? Significant damage, like you're not. Apollo might have, they just shouldn't have nerfed him. Should have just left him out of this update. Hugi, Mark of the Golden Curl, decreased damage, increase provided from 3 to 7% to 2 to 6%, whatever. Izanami, decrease attack speed on Sickle Storm from 55 to 75% to 45 to 65. Whoop-de-doo. This is not, again, not the point of frustration with this god. Her issue is her wave clear and her lane pressure. Not this. She's not really a god that is... She's not made around 1v1ing. Hu Yi is a god that is made around fighting you. She is not. And you're nerfing the thing that... You're nerfing the stem, which does make her more effective in a 1v1, but it's not the main problem with the character. Medusa, decreased attack speed from 40 to 80% to 40 to 60%, decreased base damage. Oh, this is Viper Shot, by the way. Decreased base damage from 15 to 35 to 10 to 30. Previous total is 180 up to 420. The new total being 120 to 360. That's fair because her single target burst can be really high. So whatever. Last rate, decreased physical power scaling from 80% to 70%. Whatever. You're not really using that ability for that much damage anyway. Kind of doesn't matter. RTO energy surge decreased base damage on Druid stance from 80 to 200 to 60 to 200. And nerfing the bottom damage. I guess that's helpful. Heavy charge decreased base damage on bear stance from 70 to 270 to 65 to 245. I mean, her main problem is her ability to do damage and heal all around her kit, you know? So they're not nerfing everything. They're not nerfing like the healing on this. They're only nerfing the lower end power at lower ranks, which is fine. I guess that would be when her ability to fight you is most annoying, because late game, a tank having those damage numbers not really as big of a threat as opposed to their early numbers. It's fine. Atlas kinetic charge decreased base damage from 80 to 300 to 80 to 280, which I thought 300 damage was a lot for this ability anyway. I thought it was kind of weird. And decreased magical power scaling from 45 to 40% on a god who doesn't have good scaling already. I don't know what the point of that is. Ares Shackles increased god damage from 25 to 105 to 20 to 100 per tick. That could be significant. And tone him down a little bit. Intoxicate decreased base damage from 250 to 550 to 230 to 510. Decreased magical power scaling from 70 to 60%. Which is one of the better scaling abilities on a Guardian. So, okay. And it is a lot of damage in a single burst for a Guardian to have. So that's fair. Especially considering Bacchus has been performing really well to high level in ranked. Anyway, Cabrakan, we're almost out of this. Seismic Crush decreased base damage from 100 to 280 to 80 to 260. Tectonic Shift decreased magical power scaling from 70% to 60%. And then finally, Cerberus, Paralyzing Spit, decreased base damage from 50 to 170 to 40 to 160. Decreased by 28 damage if hit by all 4 on all ranks. And then the Erlang rework. I'm not going to read this massive block of text. So, too long, didn't read. Basically, they don't like a guy that's a warrior like him performing so well in a flex role jungle and not being stronger as a solo laner or a support. So they're going to make changes that will make him better in the other 2 roles and not as good in the jungle, but still a viable jungle. They don't want to completely nerf, they just don't want it to be his best performing role when the intent of the god was not jungle to begin with. To that end, changes down here. His passive, Howling Celestial Dog, reduced damage from 15% to 7.5% of Erlang Shin's basic attack damage, but they've increased the damage on target's max health to 1% to 1.75. Does more damage. Well, it doesn't do more damage to tanks, but It does. That's weird. It's rewarding him for hitting a tank, basically. And spot weakness, which they have said, which they do say up here. I did read this beforehand. They want it to be his strongest ability. They don't want people maxing 72 transformations anymore. Or pin. We're not talking about pin, but pin is fine. That ability's not overpowered. I mean, none of his abilities are really overpowered. His ability to just deal damage quickly is way too high, and it's weird for a warrior. Anyway, decrease bonus damage per hit from 15 to 63% to 12 to 52 plus 5%. Erlingshin now gains 4 to 20% physical lifesteal while this ability is active. This is pointless. I don't know why you're giving him lifesteal for no reason. That doesn't need to be here. Erlingshin now applies a stacking debuff to enemy gods hit by this ability, which reduces their damage output by 3 to 7% per stack, stacking up to 3 times. Stacks last 3 seconds. That's fine. I like that. It's 9 to 21% damage reduction max. So, okay, that I do like, especially if you want him to be in solo. If he's hitting tanks most of the time. That's less useful. Of course, if you're jungling, you're gonna... This is really encouraging people to go and smack around a carrier or mage to reduce their damage, because 21% damage reduction on your main DPS is a lot. Anyway, 72 transformations. Erlingshin is now knock up and slow immune while he is transformed into either animal. Kind of hate that, because that was good counterplay, but okay. Mink form, Erlingshin now gains 50% movement speed for 4 seconds after the dash completes, which he did not have before. He just had attack speed. Turtle form. This ability no longer knocks enemies up, which is kind of important, because now you can't do that uninterrupted burst of damage that he used to have. Shield health changed from 70 to 230 to 50 to 250, with 75% total protections, encouraging you to build more protections and less damage. 9 turns blessing, increased damage mitigation from 10 to 15% to 10 to 20%. There you go. Does this actually make him undesirable enough as a jungler to make solo stronger? No, I don't think it does. You made him perform better as a solo laner, but I think that's all you've done at this point. Now, not having the knockup on Turtle, that does affect how he jungles a little bit, in terms of how he ganks a target. But it's really not a big deal, especially when you're putting damage reduction on spot weakness. Like, if you're in jungle, you're going to love that, because in jungle, you're ganking high DPS targets. So you're getting the most value out of this ability by doing that, and not going around hitting tanks in solo lane like you would be doing, as they say they intend. Now, his burst from his passive getting toned down a little bit on... That's good in terms of that. But I don't know that they've actually accomplished their goal in the way that they want to, or accomplished the goal they intended. Because you've made him a little bit weaker as a jungler and a little bit stronger as a solo laner, but you've kind of balanced it to where he's good in both, not better in solo and worse in jungle. So I don't know. Is this going to make a big difference? I don't think it's going to be that big of a difference, and you're still going to see him in jungle all the time. Anyway, and as usual, thank the new voice actors for lending their talents for the new skins. And then there we are back at the top. Like and subscribe if you guys enjoyed the look at the Nerfs only patch. Oops, Nerfs only. Leave a comment down below if you want. As always, check out the links down in the description. I'll see you guys next time for some more Smite. Have a good one.